This is Tell Me Exactly, an emergency communications podcast. I'm Meridith Jensen. Today we're talking about ACE status and where you can go once your comm center has achieved it. I am back again with two of my favorites, Gary Galasso and Chris Bradford. Thanks, gentlemen. Thanks for coming back.
Yeah. It's always a pleasure. Always.
It's always a good time when we're together. All right, so let's tell our audience everything they need to know about life after achieving ACE. Let's start with, what is ACE?
Basically, it's accreditation awarded by the International Academy of Emergency Dispatching. Its designation is reserved for high-performing agencies that consistently put in the work to achieve excellence.
Okay.
It's a distinguished award and a badge of honor for those who go all in to cultivate center-wide pride, teamwork, and innovation by putting their communications first.
Okay, so it's accreditation through the International Academies of Emergency Dispatch. So why would a comm center want it, Chris?
You know, that's a very good question, because we look at accreditations just in general, right? We stop for a second and say, well, why would you put your kid into a school that's accredited compared to a general school? If you know a hospital is accredited in strokes, would you just go to one that's not and your family member is suffering from a stroke? No, you'd want the best, and that's why you would choose that. You know, unfortunately, where you live sometimes isn't dictated by you. But if you happen to travel, you do the research, wouldn't you want to move to somewhere that you know the best quality of care when you have a crisis or emergency is going to be held within? So, in my opinion, why someone wants to be accredited? Because we want to show the community and the world that we just don't do the job, but we do it with a high degree of excellence.
Okay.
So when you come here, the chances of survival, the chances of you having the right standard of care is not by chance. It is going to be defined here.
Okay. Anything else to add to that, Gary?
Oh, I just think that we're all public servants, and I believe that we want to do the very best for the communities we serve. And I think having a validation of that's so important.
We certainly don't get into this for the paychecks, because we're not millionaires.
No, we don't. and we talk about being efficient, effective, and having great outcomes. And we have validation from an international organization that actually proves that we are operating at the highest level and obviously giving the best care we can for the people that we care about and love.
Okay. Excellent.
I was going to say, and that's the key. It's that external validation. Many people know that we're good, and they'll say sometimes, well, I don't need someone to tell me I'm good. But again, I think, Gary, you alluded to it earlier. That's that old school mentality, right? When you have an outside body that can justify and help you show that what you do is not something that you're harboring yourself, but it is actually proven externally from outside bodies that are recognized. That goes a long way.
Our accreditation is often referred to as ACE, and it actually is an acronym that stands for Accredited Center of Excellence, right?
Exactly.
And so the agencies that achieve ACE, they don't come by it lightly, right? It takes a lot of hard work and dedication, and to both of your points, you know, proof that we are performing and using our systems and serving our communities, most importantly, at the highest levels of care, right? And so, yeah, it's that level of excellence.
Yeah, everything we do is recorded. It's funny that police and other agencies are just now coming into that world, but from day one, everything that we have done has been recorded. So why would you not want a good checks and balances to know that when you're calling with an emergency that it's being done right? Right.
So for any of our listeners that are tuning in that have their agency has not achieved ACE yet, how do they get there?
Well, there is the 20 points, and we refer to them as those 20 different requirements in order to achieve ACE. A lot of it's based on performances identified by established standards. We call about the EDQ standards. We talk about the actual standards for evaluating the call and obviously training your people. But there's also policy procedures that must be in place and adhered to. And that's also proven through the 20 points as well. And we have to say, too, as well, that fact that the high performance have to be proven and and justified in the evaluation of how calls are being evaluated, as well as the academy evaluating some of the calls as well that they perform.
Mm-hmm. And it's not just the performance of the dispatchers, to your point. It also includes policies, and lots of other elements of the 20 points of accreditation are really designed that when we put those in place at an agency, we know that that agency is set up to be pointed towards sustainable, successful use of the system in the best practices of our stuff, right? Of our system. So getting the most out of putting our systems in place, right, Chris?
Yes, and that's again what this accreditation does, because medicine changes. So we can't be doing something we did 10 years ago, right? Can't be on an older protocol because, again, what we did 10 years ago doesn't work. So again, this, 20 points of accreditation gives us that validation that agencies are staying with the latest standard of care because we know that works. So it's so important that we hold agencies to that.
Absolutely. Yeah, the research and the science behind emergency medical dispatching, fire dispatching, police dispatching is constantly evolving and changing. So those elements of staying on the cutting edge of the research and the science is definitely represented in those 20 points, right? Of being an agency that is willing to evolve and change and do things in line with best practices as they are today. Not just we've always done it that way because that's the way that we've always done it.
Exactly. You had it.
So then we've got the 20 points, right? So essentially agencies are going to need to put together their packet of all of the different elements of the 20 points of accreditation that includes those policies and procedures and lots of other elements. Then they also need to get to those levels of performance that are in line with the performance standards, right? So once their comm center staff are performing at those levels, then they can really start looking at, putting together their 20 points of accreditation. So once they actually do that, then what happens?
Well, the academy will receive their application. They'll set up an evaluation of the center itself. They actually make an on-site visit. They will take 25 of their calls and assess them through the quality assurance people designated by the academy to assure the performance is evaluated appropriately within the center. And then once that's achieved and it meets that requirement, then the data that the agency submitted can be trusted and verified. And once that is done and the fee is paid, they're able to be considered for accreditation by the academy at that point in time.
Right. And I want to back you up just a second. Chris, those 25 calls that they're listening to, you're also one of the fellow EDQ protocol software experts. They're not just listening to them for the performance of the dispatchers. What else are they looking for on those 25 case reviews?
Yeah, they're trying to see that to make sure that the person that's reviewing those particular cases are up to the standards of what the academy calls for. Again, if that person is not, then we're letting things slip that shouldn't slip, or
Right.
we're not giving the proper standard of care. So it's a twofold thing. One, we want to know that the call takers are following it, and then we want to know that there's someone there that's going to help them, and also it's going to highlight when they're doing things great.
Oh, that's such a huge element of it, yeah.
Yeah, it's the scoring is not the fact that the calls being submitted are perfect. It's just identifying, as Chris mentioned, how they're being scored. Are they being scored accurately? Then they can take that validation to the countless calls they're submitting through their data to say these are truly being evaluated appropriately and they have met that standard.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring that up, Gary, because the point when you submit those 25 case reviews for the ACE review committee is not to pick calls that are all perfect, right? Mm-hmm. Because again, we want to make sure that your call takers are performing at the highest levels of the standards, but also, as Chris mentioned, that your queues are doing it right, and that the things that they're picking up on for opportunities for improvement are being used and not just being wasted, right? When we do know and see opportunities for improvement, we want to make sure that those are being evaluated. Excellent. So then let's talk about once an agency achieves accreditation, then what? Like, what do they do after that? Like, what happens? You've made it to the top of the mountain. They've handed you your gold trophy, as it were. Then what? What happens next?
Well, you got to admit, everyone that achieves ACE looks forward to come to Navigator and get the award. And obviously 1,500 to 2,000 people recognizing they're one of the few hundred agencies out there that have achieved that. So that's a major accomplishment in itself. But and we can talk a little bit in a few moments about maintaining that. But what we try to set these people up, once you've achieved this, some things that you want to look for opportunities here. Number one opportunity is actually identify an opportunity to have your own instructors. If you're established as an ACE agency, you now can have people that meet the requirement to become instructors now to actually meet the prerequisite of becoming an instructor. So that having your own instructors saves you time, saves you money, obviously gives you more flexibility when you train your people. So that is very much something that most agencies want. I think the second thing, from the medical perspective, is achieving your Omega protocol status. And I think that's what we look for. When agencies overwhelmed with so many emergency calls, and we can say through using the advanced Omega protocol, we can reduce our call volume by up to 20% by actually having these calls actually sent over to an emergency communication nurse system that allows them to triage the calls out of 911, actually relieves their agency from a lot more workload and really helps them out.
Yeah, and I'm wondering how many of our listeners have achieved ACE and maybe don't know that that's an option for them now, is that they qualify after achieving ACE for both of those things. Number one, an in-house instructor, right, to be able to put someone forth as an instructor with us. And number two, the Omega and ECNS.
Well, if I could add to that my experience with my agency within my county, there's actually about 4 agencies that provide emergency medical dispatch in my county. At least 2 of them have been accredited for over 20 years and are just now looking at reducing their call volume.
Wow.
And I think finally we're there because they've maintained such a high performance and not take advantage of the opportunity. I'm so looking forward to them being able to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So like Gary, when we were the 3rd center to become accredited in the state of Florida. At the time, there was only 2 in Miami. And, we wanted to be the 3rd. We wanted to be recognized. And believe it or not, one of the agencies in Miami became one of our mentors and helped us get there. And so as soon as we achieved it, we in turn became mentors for counties all around us.
That's fantastic.
So it's like, where do we go next? What do? We became a beta test site for version 11, right? Mm-hmm. Because
very good.
The level of our call takers now, we're at a level to look at things and say, how can we make it better? Or where are there some issues that we can improve upon? And our PFCs became to the point where we became the beta test site for the next version. And so many changes came out of our agency. So we were happy to get to that level and then to show our stuff and that people around recognize that too.
That's awesome.
Most agencies, too, are only attacking, and appropriately so, one discipline at a time. Mm-hmm. So if they've had more than one discipline in their center, they can knock off the first one, which commonly we see is medical, right? So they take care of that first. But if you have a standard within your center of achieving ACE with one discipline,
right,
then a lot of things can be made easier for the subsequent disciplines of fire and police as well. Exactly. So once you establish a standard, you can actually establish that standard through all 3 disciplines within your center. And that really beefs up, if you will, your credibility with your stakeholders, credibility within your center, obviously with the community you serve.
In the world.
And we have a lot of triple ACE agencies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so proud of those agencies because I think of what a fine oiled machine they have going because all 3 disciplines are running at that high level of performance. Imagine the service to their communities. You talked about some areas having different levels of service. I mean, if you could live in an area where there's a triple discipline ACE agency, you really know that they are giving you the best possible care.
Exactly. And it all goes back into reaching out to the public again. Once you do something like that, you want the world to recognize. You want your community to recognize that achievement is really, really big. So it's getting in contact with the media, it is broadcasting an ad to your communities and letting them know, number one, what does that really mean? The importance of when they call, they're getting the best service, the best chance of survival in their time of need. So those are things that you don't want to keep to yourself, right?
That's right.
You want the world to recognize, because when you need their help, when you need their assistance, they know who you are and what you are.
Right. Especially when those things come up on your voting for tax increases and things like that. Hey, this agency needs it because they're high performers, and look at the service they're giving
I'm
us.
so glad you said that, Meridith, because I know that my fire chief stood before the city council when they were looking to cut our budget when it comes to communications, and the fact the chief could stand there and say, we have been credited for this many years, giving the highest level performance for the city that we serve. And we can show you examples in this council meeting of how we benefited the community and saved our budget truly.
Yeah, absolutely.
By giving that credibility. The other thing, too, is I think that having high performance needs to be passed back into the stakeholder system. If police, fire, or medical agencies have been just, let's say, holding off being more progressive about how they send their resources, when they send resources, and what mode they send resources, they finally established such a credibility internationally that go back to the table with your stakeholders and start saying, hey, you want to be more efficient in your resources, maybe not send so much resources to these calls, because our agency now has credibility in our interrogation and our assessment of the calls. Maybe you want to look at doing this a little more efficiently, effectively, to use your resources wiser without putting the callers at risk, in fact, improving their chances of surviving their situation.
Right. We can earn that trust of, hey, when our call takers tell you that this patient needs this level of care based on our triage of the protocols and the systems, you can trust that because we know that they're performing at really high levels, and most of the time the information that we've got is accurate. So the system's not really recommending that lights and sirens with all the extra resources for that person. So yeah, I love it.
Chris, I just want to reach out to you because I've been in so many meetings with you and where you've showcased these saves and showcased these situations from accredited centers. Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it makes the difference on not just the call takers, but also the lives that they have affected. And we sometimes miss that link that we have. And so becoming a center of excellence, when you have someone that is reviewing these cases and seeing it happen, and then you can get it to the public and you can educate them that though we so depend on the crews getting there, so we so depend on the doctors and them making a difference, but if it didn't start with dispatch, none of that would have a difference. And so when we can key in and put that whole element together and show that, hey, because that dispatcher told them to start CPR, or they were there to help deliver that baby, right? And we give that education to the public that you don't have to know CPR per se, right? You don't need to know how to deliver a baby. We're going to guide you every step of the way before any crew gets on there. And as the doc clones, we are the first responder. So being able to educate the public and show these wins, there's enough bad news going around every day. But when we can highlight a save, someone walking out of the hospital because, you know what, we started it off right there in the beginning, or the fact that a child was delivered, or the fact that we got someone in a fire, we got them out because we told them to leave immediately, right? Those things can make such a difference. And it's so important that the public is educated on that because we are still the unsung heroes. People don't know what or how we do because we're behind the scenes, right? They see the firefighters, they see the EMTs, but they only hear us. And so if we can help by putting that out to the public, and if we reunite or if we come together and show that, hey, a save was done today and it all started right here, how much we can make it a difference and impact, not just, again, us, but the career that we have, right? Our industry, which is sometimes overmissed.
And I think what you're talking about is so critically important because we know that if we are celebrating the ways that we are getting it right, the amount of mistakes and things that can happen decreases automatically when we are celebrating the heck out of the things that we've gotten right.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about maintaining your ACE because we definitely, once you get ACE, it's not enough to just throw that party, run across that stage at Navigator and grab that trophy. You got to stay on it.
Yes.
Advice for agencies on maintaining their ACE.
I would tell you it was a hard lesson that we had to learn, because as great as we wanted to be and the impact we had, our whole organization in dispatch became complacent. And in fact, it hit us so hard that we lost our accreditation because we just did not keep that fire burning. We just did not keep trying to push to the next level, right? We're good.
Sat
And,
back.
right.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, we didn't have the numbers to show that anymore. And we failed on that. So it's very important that, organizations, that they stay with that fire being burned. They stay knowledge sharing, right? Don't just keep it to yourself. Become mentors for others, right? And keep people burning per se as to why we make a difference or why we are who we are. The training, the development, that doesn't change. Are we on cutting edge? Are we trying to figure out how we can make a difference with protocol changes, technology that's out there? All those things continue to grow. So where are we in doing that? Or do we just become complacent and say, oh, it's all right, we don't have to do that, we're good? So it's very important that we are looking at innovation, technology. We're continuing to look at our continuing dispatch. And as we said, we're in the community, right?
Yeah. And we gotta be kind of living and breathing those 20 points of accreditation every day, not just up until the point when we walk across the stage at Navigator and get that trophy in our hands. We got to make sure, and that's why those policies and things are in and a part of the 20 points, because it's about long-term sustainability, not just enough to get us across that stage. We want to maintain this high level forever.
And it's sad. I won't say it's sad, because when you reach this level, unfortunately, everyone doesn't get a raise, right?
Yep.
And everyone doesn't get, like, per se, a certification to show that I am it. But it takes each and every call taker to make that difference. And so it goes back to everyone taking ownership, because that call coming in could be your loved one. So you want to give them the best every single time that you can. And I think when organizations and then individuals come to understand that, they see how important it is not to just take a call, but to do it with a high degree of excellence, right?
Absolutely.
And beyond there. And that can change the life of having a job and having a career and being the best you can.
And making a difference, yeah.
Right, yes.
I think it's also attractive, too, for hiring perspectives. Having a high standard of performance attracts high-quality people. And, again, goes a long way to the workforce, and when they recognize the high performance, it gives a better chance for the leaders to bring this forward to better benefits, better pay, hopefully, in that process. But what I like most, too, and what Chris mentioned before, is the fact that you're recognized as a responder. You are really true part of the responding process, the unrecognized hero, because you're not driving a shiny thing with lights on top. You're just as important to it because you're the first responder. We talked about that, and having that high standard of being accredited in that realm I think, gives a lot of kudos to the agency. Obviously, a lot of kudos to the dispatchers that serve that agency.
For sure.
So any final thoughts for our listeners that have newly accredited at their agency? They've got the plaque on the wall. They have celebrated. They've walked across the stage. What's your one piece of advice to go out to them listening today?
Don't stop growing. Keep
Excellent.
benefiting from this. Keep getting better at what you're doing, and be a part of the process to improve it. Chris mentioned the fact of being a beta test site for a new version that goes out or what have you. That opens all these doors to you, and be a part of the process to improve it.
That's right. I totally agree. Get it, live it, and be about it.
Yep. Live, breathe,
benefits.
eat, sleep, the systems, right? Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again, gentlemen. As always, this was very informative, and I appreciate all of your experience. And we wish the best for our listeners that are out there working towards ACE. We can't wait to see you walk across that stage next Navigator conference.
That's right. Come to the ACE reception, and we'll look forward to seeing them.
Yeah, to our listeners, we can't wait to see you walk across that stage at Navigator and get that trophy for ACE next year. And if you need any help or have any questions, please be sure to reach out to us, because we've got lots of resources and ways that we can help.
Yes.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Meridith.
All right,
Thanks, Chris.
Take care.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, give us a 5-star rating wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to let us know what you liked and subscribe and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Look for @TellMeExactly to get the latest on all things emergency communications. Tell Me Exactly is a Priority Dispatch Corporation podcast developed by our team of protocol experts and hosted by me, Meridith Jensen, with Cody Ekman as producer, Reading Roberts as sound engineer, Scott Robinson and Jason Barber as executive producers.